Nintendo games are known for being family-friendly. That's not a bad thing, it just means that anyone from 6 to 60 years old can sit down in front of Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, or Animal Crossing and have a great time. Which is what makes Bayonetta stand out so much from every other series that Nintendo publishes. These games are so sexy that Bayonetta 3 had to add a special, less sexy mode so you can play on the bus without feeling embarrassed. Bayonetta's moves had to be changed when she was added to Smash because she showed too much skin. And yet, Bayonetta as a series is firmly associated with Nintendo. In 2012, the company stepped in to save the series after it was left without a publisher and without any money. Not only did Nintendo fund Bayonetta 2, but also Bayonetta 3, a port of Bayonetta 1, and a spin-off on the Switch. If it hadn't been for Nintendo saving the day, this series just wouldn't exist anymore. So in this video, I want to go back to the early days of Bayonetta, how the series lost its original publisher, why Nintendo decided to fund these sexy games, and how at one time Nintendo asked for the games to be made even sexier. In the words of Bayonetta herself, let's dance, boys. Our story begins with Bayonetta 1, which began development at the start of 2007. The series was dreamt up by Hideki Kamiya, who had become an extremely respected game creator by the late 2000s. Kamiya had worked at Capcom for years, helping design the original Resident Evil, and directing games like Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry, Okami, and many more. So, in 2006, when Capcom left him essentially without a job, Kamiya formed a new studio with a few other ex-Capcom developers called Platinum Games. And thanks to their great reputation within the games industry, Platinum Games soon scored a deal with Sega. They would develop 4 brand new games, which Sega would fund and publish. And one of those games was a strange, sexy action game called Bayonetta. As Kamiya himself explained, for Bayonetta 1, we signed a contract with Sega and received funds from them, and then we proposed a design for the game and entered production. All of the rights belonged to Sega. And thus, over the next 2 years, Platinum Games gradually brought their vision for Bayonetta to life. They developed the Xbox 360 version, while Sega contracted another company to port the game onto the PS3. This PS3 port had quite a lot of issues, which we'll get to in a second. And so, on the 29th of October 2009, Bayonetta was launched in Japan on both the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. A couple of months later, it was released in North America too. Feedback from players was mostly great. They liked the character of Bayonetta, and the game felt great to play. On the Xbox, that is. On the PlayStation, the game tended to lag pretty badly at times, so the silky smooth gameplay wasn't quite so silky smooth. And that wasn't the only issue with the launch. Although Bayonetta ended up selling over 1.3 million copies, the president of Platinum Games, Tatsuya Minami, still wasn't happy. Bayonetta didn't sell what we wanted it to sell, he said in an interview. We were hoping it was going to do a little bit better than that, although you can't put it all on the game itself. I think there were a lot of issues with when it came out, the kind of marketing behind it. And the ones behind the marketing, well, that was Sega. Nevertheless, the game sold enough copies for Sega to begin funding a sequel, Bayonetta 2. The team at Platinum got well underway on this new project, and development was progressing smoothly. Until, that is, Sega suddenly announced that they were pulling funding from the project. Platinum was left without any way of finishing the game. This was a major rug pull moment. According to Hideki Kamiya, when we started making Bayonetta 2, we initially received funds from Sega to develop the game for multiple platforms, but the project was halted due to circumstances at Sega. So let's talk about those circumstances. In 2012, Sega made an announcement. They were shutting down a bunch of their offices in Europe. Plus, going forward, they would be focusing on just their biggest franchises and games. In other words, rather than publishing all kinds of strange and unique video games which wouldn't always sell well, they'd focus on games like Sonic, which were more of a guaranteed hit. Incidentally, the two Sonic games which followed this announcement were Sonic Lost World and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, which were both somewhat disastrous. I personally think that funding only your biggest franchises is a pretty short-sighted strategy. But regardless of what I think, that is the strategy that Sega adopted. And as a result, Platinum was left with a half-finished Bayonetta 2. At this point, only another publisher stepping in to fund the other half of the game could possibly save this project. Which brings us to September 13th, 2012, which is the day when Nintendo announced that Bayonetta 2 would be coming exclusively to the Wii U. Reactions from fans of the first Bayonetta game were mixed, but as time went by, it became increasingly clear that Nintendo had stepped in to fund the remainder of Bayonetta 2's development. According to the game's producer, Atsushi Inaba, would Bayonetta 2 not exist without Nintendo? The answer is yes. We are not viewing this as a change of platform. We were looking for a partner to create Bayonetta 2, and Nintendo was a strong, cooperative partner that was willing to create and grow Bayonetta 2 together with us. As a result, the platform became the Wii U. It's hard to read that quote and not interpret it as Nintendo were the only ones who'd pay for Bayonetta 2. That leaves the game in a pretty unique position when it comes to ownership. According to Hideki Kamiya, after Sega dropped Bayonetta 2's funding, quote, Nintendo then stepped in to continue funding the game, allowing us to finish it. As such, the rights belong to Sega and Nintendo. But wasn't Nintendo worried that Bayonetta was too sexy? Might this game ruin their family-friendly reputation? Well, no, it seems like that might have been exactly what Nintendo wanted in a strange kind of way. The company certainly wasn't shying away from Bayonetta's sexy side. None of Bayonetta's nudity is censored in the games Nintendo funded, and in fact, they actually encouraged it. You see, when Bayonetta 1 and 2 were released on the Wii U, Platinum Games added a few bonus costumes that Bayonetta can wear, all themed around Nintendo characters: Peach, Link, Samus, and Daisy. And since these were Nintendo's characters, and Nintendo had to approve the designs, Platinum shied away from making them too sexy. With Link in particular, they made sure to cover up Bayonetta's chest. But the feedback they got from Nintendo was actually to show off more cleavage with the costume. That really surprised the designers at Platinum, but it's quite telling with what Nintendo wanted to achieve with the game. During the late Wii and early Wii U years, Nintendo sometimes struggled with the perception that its consoles were just for kids. People who considered themselves mature gamers would often stick to Sony or Microsoft's consoles. But here was Bayonetta, a game clearly designed with a mature audience in mind, which you could only play on the Wii U. As Hideki Kamiya explained, Nintendo isn't just a giant company with red tape around every corner, and after working with them for such a long time, I get the impression that although there are times when we may butt heads, they're surprisingly open to direct discussions. In the lead up to Bayonetta 2's release, Nintendo of America leaned hard into the adult nature of Bayonetta. As part of the game's marketing, they hired a Playboy model to dress up as Bayonetta and pose for a variety of pretty adult images, which I can't show here. You really get the impression that Nintendo wanted to bring in a more mature audience onto their struggling Wii U console. And so, on September the 20th, 2014, Bayonetta 2 was released for the Wii U in Japan, with the game coming out a month later in the rest of the world. Reviews for the game were glowing, people seemed to love it, but sales, on the other hand, weren't so great. In its first week, Bayonetta 2 sold about 40,000 copies. For comparison, Bayonetta 1 sold almost 140,000 copies in that same time frame. That's a major drop in sales. But it's also no huge surprise, as Bayonetta 2 had a lot working against it. It was released on Nintendo's struggling Wii U console, and it was completely unlike any other Nintendo-published game on the console. Any video game in that position would struggle to find an audience. None of this would have been a surprise to Nintendo. The real question comes down to whether or not Nintendo was pleased with the sales the game did get. Did the game introduce the Wii U to a whole new group of players? Well, the answer seems to be a resounding yes, because Nintendo have continued publishing and funding Bayonetta games in the years since, including a port of Bayonetta 1 and 2 on the Switch, alongside Bayonetta 3, which sold over 1 million copies in just 2 months. Bayonetta was included in Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, and also Smash Ultimate. And just last year, the first Bayonetta spin-off game, Cereza and the Lost Demon, was released to glowing reviews. In other words, it seems as though the bet Nintendo made on the Bayonetta series way back in 2012 has well and truly paid off. While these games aren't among Nintendo's best sellers, they're a good way to diversify the kinds of games you see on Nintendo's consoles. So why is Bayonetta a Nintendo franchise? Well, it's because of 2 things. 1, Bayonetta was abandoned by Sega, and 2, Nintendo really wanted to bring in a new audience to their games consoles. If it hadn't been for either of those 2 things, Bayonetta would maybe still be a Sega franchise, or the series could have totally died out. But instead, Nintendo chose to save the series, and Bayonetta became one of the most unique characters in Nintendo's roster. Thank you so much to my patrons for supporting this channel. I'm super grateful to every single one of you. A special thanks to my $10 members: Alison Withernall, Brandon Pimental, Brett and Eric, Candy Crystal, Cyprian Eof, Daryl Gero, Ellie Birnbaum, Evan Kinney, J.E., Jim Gilsonen, Kieran Chan, Kelly Wright, Lucas Little, Michael Gunter, Skate or Pie, and Thomas Söderlund.